The story begins in Toronto. We meet a successful woman, Catherine Stewart. She is a respected gynecologist with her own practice, patients, reputation, and an outwardly prosperous life. She lives with her husband, David, a music professor, and their teenage son. The family seems well off, intelligent, and from the outside, it appears they have no problems. But from the very first scenes, it becomes clear Catherine feels insecure and lonely. Her husband is increasingly staying late at work, spending time with his students, surrounded by young women, and Catherine begins to suspect, could he be cheating on her? Catherine is a sensitive, vulnerable woman, and though she tries to maintain a calm appearance, anxiety eats away at her from within. Soon, she starts noticing small but unsettling details. Her husband's phone calls, his flirting at a party, a certain coldness in his manner. All of this adds up to the feeling that her marriage is falling apart. At David's birthday party, the situation escalates. He arrives late, flirts with one of his students, and Catherine feels humiliated, as though she is being pushed out of her own family. After the celebration, she is left in disappointment and jealousy, which gradually turns into a determination to act. It is at this moment that Chloe appears in her life, a young, beautiful escort. A chance encounter turns into a pivotal event. Catherine forms a plan. She wants to test her husband. She decides to hire Chloe to seduce David and tell her the truth, whether he is unfaithful or not. The idea seems both reckless and inevitable. Catherine is too tormented by doubt. She needs proof, even if it will hurt. She steps into the game, not realizing what it will ultimately mean for her. Catherine meets Chloe in a restaurant. The atmosphere of their conversation is tense. On one side, an experienced, mature woman used to keeping everything under control. On the other, a young, liberated, almost enigmatic girl who clearly understands what her client is interested in. Catherine states directly that she needs to test her husband. She asks Chloe to approach him, strike up an acquaintance, and try to establish contact, and then honestly report how he behaves. Chloe agrees, doing so calmly and professionally, as if this isn't something intimate but simply an assignment. A few days later, Chloe comes back to Catherine with a report. She met David, they talked, and he showed interest. She describes the details of their conversation, how he smiled, how he brushed back his hair, how he looked at her. Each word feels like a dagger in Catherine's heart, but Catherine doesn't stop. She again instructs Chloe to meet with her husband. This time, the girl shares even more details. They sat close. He touched her hand, seemingly by accident, yet clearly not a friendly gesture. With each new meeting, Catherine sinks deeper into her painful curiosity. She listens to Chloe's stories, trying to discern, where does fiction end and truth begin? Chloe describes everything so vividly, so sensually, as if she herself takes pleasure in sharing it. Gradually, a shift begins to occur in their conversations. A subtle tension develops between Catherine and Chloe. The older woman, tormented by jealousy, starts to feel a strange attraction to her young confidant. She doesn't understand where it comes from. Whether from jealousy, envy of her youth and freedom, or from hidden desires she had never acknowledged before. Now everything becomes far more complicated. Testing her husband turns into a personal, dangerous game, where the lines between jealousy, passion, and truth begin to blur. Meanwhile, the atmosphere at home grows tense. David notices that his wife is becoming distant, and their son also senses the coldness and unspoken tension within the family. But Catherine withdraws further into her secret, hidden behind her meetings with Chloe. Gradually, the girl begins to appear more and more often. It's as if she is looking for excuses to cross paths with Catherine, showing that their connection is no longer limited to a simple job. Chloe demonstrates not only interest in the task, but a particular attention toward Catherine herself. Catherine is increasingly consumed by jealousy. She decides to take things further and goes to the hotel room where, according to Chloe, she had met with David. The atmosphere of the place presses down on her. The unfamiliar bed, the scent of freshly laundered sheets mixed with a faint trace of perfume, as if someone had just been there. Perhaps her husband was here. Perhaps things had happened in this very room that Catherine is afraid even to imagine. Chloe begins to speak. She tells how David sat close to her, how his hand brushed against her thigh as if by accident, how he looked straight into her eyes, pausing between words as though waiting for a reply. She describes the timbre of his voice, the softness of his gestures, the tilt of his head. She listens and feels a strange, painful arousal rising inside her. Catherine's heart beats faster, her breathing grows uneven. Jealousy, hurt, and desire entwine into a tormenting mixture that leaves her dizzy. When they leave the room and head toward the elevator, the tension reaches its peak. Exhausted by her inner contradictions, Catherine gives in, sinking into a chair in the hallway and bursting into tears. She feels betrayed and humiliated, convinced that her husband has indeed crossed the line. Chloe sits down beside her, her hand gently touching Catherine's shoulder. Then, suddenly, she embraces her and, without breaking eye contact, presses her lips to Catherine's. Catherine responds. For a fleeting moment, her body surrenders to the impulse, but then her mind seizes control. She pulls away sharply and says firmly that she cannot. Rising to her feet, she walks away, leaving Chloe alone in the silence of the hotel corridor. But soon, the tension within the family only grows stronger. At a party after their son's concert, David behaves coldly, almost detached. He allows himself to flirt with a young waitress, as if not even noticing his wife. For Catherine, this becomes the last straw. Wounded and humiliated, she cannot endure it any longer. In a surge of jealousy, Catherine leaves the event without saying a word to anyone and heads to the place where she knows someone is waiting, the hotel, to Chloe. This time, she does not resist. Intimacy takes place between them, something Catherine had never dared before. They make love, and within that passion, there is both pain and a sense of release. Afterwards, they ride together in a taxi. And it is then that Chloe learns Catherine's address, giving her the chance to enter her private world. When Catherine returns home, she can no longer keep up the mask. She quarrels with her husband, and the tension within the family reaches its peak. The next morning, Catherine wakes not refreshed, but drained. But there is no time to sort out her feelings. She is already late for work. Rushing into the clinic, Catherine shrugs off her coat on the go, trying to maintain the appearance of her usual composure. Patients are already waiting in the reception area, and the secretary hands her a stack of notes. On each of them is the same name, Chloe. But as soon as she sits down at her computer, Chloe's persistence takes another form. On the screen is an email, and with it, photographs. Catherine freezes. In the pictures, she sees herself asleep after the night in the hotel, and beside her, Chloe staring straight into the camera. Not even an hour passes before Chloe shows up at the clinic. She enters with a bouquet of flowers, smiling with a confidence that feels out of place, as if she were arriving for a date, not stepping into the office of a married woman. She speaks of how special the evening was for her, how she doesn't want to stop, how she is ready to continue. Catherine listens in silence, tense. She is uncomfortable admitting that part of Chloe's words resonate within her. She whispers that yes, she enjoyed it too, but then shuts herself off. Pulling herself together, Catherine suddenly changes her tone. She takes out money and hands it to Chloe. Her words are dry, almost cold. It is over. Whatever it was, it must remain in the past. These words strike Chloe like a blow. Her eyes fill with tears. She tries to make a scene, but Catherine cuts her off mercilessly. "We had a deal," she says, as if putting a final period on the matter. Chloe leaves, and in her heart grows not only hurt, but fury. She feels betrayed, abandoned, used, and such wounds are not ones she knows how to forgive. Chloe shows up at the hockey game where Catherine's son is playing. She appears as if by chance, blending into the crowd of spectators, yet her eyes are fixed only on him. After the game, she finds a moment to approach the boy. In her hands is a rare record, unusual, almost precious, and she gives it to him as though it were an innocent gift. For the boy, it is nothing more than a kind gesture. But for Catherine, the meaning is far more disturbing. That evening, back at home, she suddenly hears a familiar melody drifting from her son's room, a tune she knows all too well. It is the same music she once heard with Chloe. Unable to contain herself, she bursts into the room, only to be met by her son's puzzled gaze. He has no idea who she is searching for or why she looks so shaken. Catherine falters, but before she can gather herself, her phone buzzes with a new message. Chloe writes to Catherine, she has just been with David, that he confessed his love to her. These words sound like a verdict, and Catherine decides to act. She arranges a meeting at a cafe, inviting both her husband and Chloe. David arrives first. When pressed for the truth, he admits, yes, he stayed longer in New York and allowed himself some flirting, but there was no affair. At that moment, Chloe enters, sees them together, and meeting David's gaze, abruptly turns and leaves without a word. Shaken, David asks, "Who is this girl?" Catherine replies shortly, "No one," but he senses she is hiding something, and without answers, he walks away. Catherine follows him outside and finally confesses everything: the deal with Chloe, her manipulations, even the night they spent together. David is stunned, yet instead of anger, understanding rises in him. He sees his wife's pain, her love, and he embraces and kisses her as if saying, "I'm still with you." For Catherine, it becomes a glimmer of hope. For Chloe, the beginning of the end. There is too much pain and humiliation in her soul for her to simply disappear. She decides to take from Catherine what is most precious to her, to destroy her home from within. One evening, Catherine returns home and goes upstairs to the bedroom. But when she pushes open the door, she freezes in horror. On her bed, Chloe and her son. The boy is stunned, embarrassed, and immediately jumps up, leaving the room without understanding what is happening. Chloe stays behind. Her face is twisted with pain and rage. She screams, accuses, cries, as if she herself no longer knows what she wants: love, forgiveness, or revenge. In a sudden outburst, she grabs a sharp hairpin from the table and presses it to Catherine's throat. Her voice trembles. "You don't understand. I love you." They find themselves by the bedroom window. Chloe demands that Catherine acknowledge her feelings, that she kiss her for real, at least once. Catherine begs her to put the hairpin down, but she has no choice. To calm the girl, she yields and kisses her. At that very moment, Catherine's son appears in the doorway. Seeing him, Catherine pushes Chloe away. The glass shatters, and Chloe is left clinging to the window ledge. For a few desperate seconds, her fingers clutch the edge, and then slip. Her body falls, the silence broken by the dull sound of impact below. Catherine stands frozen by the window, horrified by what has just happened. What began as an innocent test of her husband has ended in tragedy. In the final scene, Catherine attends her son's graduation celebration. In her eyes there is sorrow, a shadow of the past, but also understanding. She now knows the price of passion, jealousy, and the fragility of human bonds.